with us entering the third half of 3.8. Today I'm here with the should use summon for the 3.8 third half reruns, being Aglaea and Sunday. In this video, I'll mainly be talking about the characters over the time since they released and how they kind of held up in current meta and such, and then reasons why you should or should not summon for both of them. Stuck grinding in Honkai Star Rail? Need Stellar Jades fast? We've got you covered. Head over to U7 Buy, your ultimate gaming hub for save fast and cheap in-game top-ups. Whether it's Star Rail or your other favorite games, U7 delivers instantly and players love it. Check out their Trustpilot reviews, they're actually top ranked. On the Honkai Star Rail direct top-up page, you can recharge your account in seconds. For example, 8080 Honorific shards cost $99.99 in the official store, but on U7 Buy, you can see here it's way cheaper. Just pick your server, enter UID, pay securely, and boom, your account is instantly loaded. Want extra savings? Use code PRETSR at checkout for 5% off, perfect for last minute pulls, battle passes, or surprising a friend. And here's a bonus. If you spend $80 a month on U7 Buy, you can grab the Honkai Star Rail Express Pass for only 1 cent, which is nearly free. Click on the link in my description, recharge fast, save more, and keep blazing those trails. Starting it off with Aglaea. So Aglaea is a Remembrance DPS, the first one we actually got. Throughout the entirety of 3.x, she was relatively strong if you did have the right investment. The only problem with Aglaea is that she was one of the few characters in the 3.x era that really received no buffs. And I don't mean direct buffs to kit or anything like that, I just mean like character-wise. When you think of the Remembrance team, you think of Castrus and how Castrus got Hyacine, Castrus got Evernight, Cyrene. How Castrus really just got stronger throughout the entire update. When it comes to Aglaea specifically, she didn't really receive anything. At most, she received side grades to her current team, being in the form of Tribi and such, and it wasn't until really Cyrene till you actually got an upgrade for the team. And Cyrene was also made to be an upgrade for all the Crisis heirs anyways, so she kind of just got the same treatment that everyone else did, while others did just get better treatment. But despite all this and everything being against her, because she also didn't really get anything shielded for her, since when it came to Remembrance such, it would usually be like, oh, some form of damage dealt, or something HP related. Aglaea still, with proper investment as I didn't mention, held up strong. She had a lot of different ways to make up issues with her ultimate, depending on the team you ran, because funny enough, Sunday is tied to her teams. If you had Sunday plus Popo, you could actually make up for her energy issues without having E1. You were able to hit the speed that you did want for a 2x setup without her Lycon as well, it just was harder. But there were different ways that you could actually go about building her depending on your investment. At Ezer S0, you could just really go for like an energy regen rope, you would be doing less damage overall, but you have ways to offset it like that. If you pulled for Ezer S1 and you went for a 2x plus 1 setup with Sunday, in that case you would attack a lot to be able to also offset the energy somewhat in some way, shape, or form. If you went E1 S0, then you were able to just build a base speed Aglaea. Since a base speed Aglaea focusing on attack percent, crit rate, and crit damage ratio actually can outperform a 2x plus 1 setup. And then if you had E1 S1, same thing does apply, you were just able to do the base speed setup, or it would just be easier for you to go 2x plus 1 if you wanted to. It wasn't that much of a difference, it really just depended on your build and what stats had better rolls overall. The tuning of your Sunday speed, and if you were able to hit higher speed thresholds to run a base speed Aglaea since you wanted to run higher thresholds anyways. But nonetheless, it was very apparent that Aglaea did need higher investment than a lot of characters to really perform at her best. Her entry cost was very high to perform good. At a low level, if you go Ezer S0 for the entire team, it doesn't actually perform as good as a lot of the 3.x characters, such as Anoxa, even Phynon, and even the Castrus Remembrance team. So the bar to entry when it came to Aglaea's teams, even when she did come out, was on the higher side. But reaching the higher threshold, again, it could just be something like E1 S0, alongside having Sunday, alongside having Cyrene now, or if you weren't back then, you could just have Robin. And then your sustain, or if you're doing sustain, there's someone else is on that slot. As long as you had the rotation to be able to stay in her ultimate, and at least had Sunday, Aglaea actually was a very strong DPS that was able to clear the entirety of 3.x. The only place she really struggled was Pure Fiction, but that's just because she isn't a pure AoE unit, and if you played it right, you could honestly bypass Pure Fiction as well. But in Memory of Chaos and Apocalyptic Shadow, she actually did perform very well. And now with the Cyrene team and the Cyrene upgrade for her specifically, she actually does hold up quite strong as a DPS as long as you do, again, have the right investment. So despite all the stuff being against her really and not really getting many upgrades and mainly just at most side grades, she actually has held up very, very good as a 3.x DPS. A lot of people like to downplay her a lot, but a lot of people also don't really know how good she performs at the proper investment. She actually does perform very well still if you do have the team. Next up, we have Sunday. So Sunday has been one of the additions to the Action Advanced supports, and in that group was Bronya and Sparkle already, and then Sunday was the newest addition. Sunday was probably the most comfy to play out of all of them because Bronya was skill point negative, Sparkle you were not able to do a -1 setup, Sunday was SP neutral, and if you had his light cone it was SP positive, and was able to be ran both at a -1 setup or a hyperspeed with base speed DPS. His energy buff was also really good for anyone that was able to use it. His damage dealt was less than Bronya's, but if the character did have a summon, it was better, and Sunday was kind of the character we expected to be on all the Remembrance character teams, because we did get Aglaea, who we synergized perfectly with, and then after that, we didn't get a single one, so we got kind of baited there, but nonetheless, Sunday was really good for any hyper carry team, as he just functioned really good on those teams in general. He was competitive in the role. Sparkle really wasn't ever the best in any of these, except if you're using Isle Dawning, at least until Archer release, because that's where Sparkle is best in Saw, and now with their buff, it still holds up to be true. Bronya was better if you were able to do an E2 setup with her speed manipulation, but for the majority of the players, any team that Sunday was able to go on was usually the one they would choose just because he was the easiest to use. He was by far the easiest to build since he didn't really have a specific requirement unless you were doing -1, which would be the only one. So it was either you picked -1, which was the most common, or hyperspeed if you were able to get lucky enough on your rolls and just run that. Very well-rounded kit overall. The damage dealt, even though it was below Bronya's, despite being a newer character and also a limited character, was still fine. He had a really good crit damage buff that targeted the main character he wanted to buff as well. His Lycon provided a lot, such as turning him SP positive, alongside helping him keep a really smooth uptime on his ult. And then his talent also providing 20% crit rate, which was really big, since it allowed you to build less crit rate and just focus on getting 80% in battle, and then Sunday would bring you to 100% to allow 100% crit rate builds significantly easier. Throughout the time, none of this hasn't really changed. Most people just realized that Bronya did perform better in those setups. Sunday did actually get an indirect buff with the release of Dawning Permanent Terror, as Dawning was able to dedicate an ally as bondmate and attach his summon onto them, making it considered their summon, which activated the full extent of Sunday's kit, which would make his damage dealt further than Bronya's. If you had E1, it was able to give the dragon the defense ignore fully as well, so anything that was locked behind a summon for Sunday's kit was unlocked thanks to Dawning, and that actually did help out his potential a lot. He hasn't really gone up in priority or gone down in priority. When you got him for his role, that is still his main role. You run him alongside the hyper carry characters. If you pulled Aglaea, he's glued to there as well. If you run him alongside Phynon, he's still there, and Anaxa as well. And if you're running older hyper carry characters such as Acheron still, then he still goes on there. Functions really well with Boot Hill if you're not doing the full team now, since the break team now is fully set in stone with Adalia, but Sunday setups still do work as a -1. So Sunday's overall role hasn't really changed too much. His value around his release is the same as now. If you're really running those hyper carry comps and you want the most comfortable option that still performs very good, he has still been the go-to in that role. Now for reasons why you should or should not summon for Aglaea. Most important part is the fact that you are in need of a DPS. If you are in need of a DPS, for Aglaea specifically, I 100% recommend that you have the funds to allocate for her actual investment. You don't have to go for E1 S1, but I highly recommend at least having enough to get her E1 S0, since with E1 S0, you're able to just build the base speed build and actually have enough to keep uptime on her ultimate. And then the other question would be is if you already have Sunday, or if you could at least pull him in this rerun half as well. Aglaea without Sunday is never going to perform as good as she can with Sunday. Sunday is the pixel perfect partner for that character. Aglaea really wants Sunday. So if you don't have Sunday, and if you're able to get him for that team, that's going to make Aglaea a lot stronger. And then if you also have the other teammates available, such as either Hyacine or Dawning as a sustain, or if you don't need a sustain, you can just run sustainless, that's fine too. Having Cyrene in that slot is also going to significantly help with any energy issue that may arise. To be perfectly honest, for Aglaea, it's really if you just have the right team setup. You can at least get E1 on Aglaea, you have Sunday, and you at least have Cyrene, and then the last slot can go to sustain or sustainless, depending on what you're doing. If you have those three, technically 4 if you count the E1 Aglaea, then it would actually be a really solid pickup to go for a DPS, especially if you need a lightning one specifically. And then reasons to not summon would obviously just be the opposite. If you don't need a DPS in the first place, that would be the main thing. Just focus on pulling something else or saving for the future. Or if you want to get Aglaea, but maybe you can't really invest into her too much, like maybe you can only get E0 S0, maybe you have Sunday, maybe you don't have Cyrene at the same time. Again, the team actually has like a very dedicated bar. If you're below the bar, the team is going to underperform and feel really bad and clunky to play. But if you're above the bar, the team is very smooth and easy to use and outputs a lot of damage. So if you're only able to go below the bar, again, maybe you just have an E0 S0 Sunday, or maybe your Sunday is also already just on a different team and you can't really use them with her, and then you're only able to get E0 S0 with her. In that case, I would personally recommend skipping Aglaea. And if you are, again, not in need of a DPS, you wouldn't pick there. Or if you need a DPS, but you can't go too ham, then I would go ahead and save for a different DPS instead. As much as I love Aglaea, she does need a solid amount of investment to be able to be properly usable. Then reasons why you should or should not summon for Sunday specifically, it's really if you're running any -1 team setup, and if you're having a bit of issues with using Bronya when it comes to skill points and such specifically, Sunday is a great upgrade in that regard, especially his light cone, since then he will be SP positive. If you're also someone that used Danheng Permanente religiously alongside characters like Finon or Anaxa or even Saber, Sunday is a really good character to go on those teams because again his full kit will be activated with these characters, and you will be able to utilize his buffs to the full extent and also make the dragon do a lot more if you have something like E1 per se, or if you are able to get it. Since Sunday at E0 S0 is perfectly fine even without his light cone, but his light cone makes a good amount of a difference, once again enabling a smooth rotation on his ult and keeping it up alongside making him skill point positive. So if you run any hyper carry teams really nowadays that have an action advanced support like Sparkle or Bronya, unless it's specifically Sparkle with just MEF, that's your only one, then obviously don't pull Sunday for that team. In cases where you still maybe use someone like Akron and you pair alongside Bronya or Sparkle, or if you use Finon and Anaxa alongside those two, Sunday can actually be really good, especially if you're using Permanente as he enables the full kit. And then reasons to not pull for him would obviously be if you don't have any team that really uses these characters. Let's say maybe your only action advanced character is going to be Sparkle with MEF specifically. In that case, you would not end up pulling Sunday in that regard, and you would mainly just pull Sunday's light cone to put on Sparkle instead. And then let's say your other teams are something like the full Remembrance team. The full Remembrance team is of course not going to use Sunday whatsoever, or maybe you have a team setup that can use Sunday but you maybe just perform better without him. Let's say a Finon team that is sustainless, and maybe you run something like Finon, Ceredra, Cyrene, last thought being sustained or not depending on what you're doing. If that team is clearing perfectly fine for you, Cyrene actually is able to remove the need of Sunday with the extra targeting just because Cyrene can give Finon his ultimate fully. So overall, if you need reasons to skip, it would just be if you don't use any of those teams that would have Bronya or Sparkle specifically outside of the Archer team, because that's where Sparkle is going to mainly be. And if you pull Aglaea specifically, in that case, pull Sunday, by the way. That does bring this video to a close. I do hope you found this video helpful. If you did, dropping a like would be greatly appreciated. If you're new to the channel or haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe and turn on the bell for future videos like this, along with all other types of Star content. Check the description to join the Discord, and I'll see you later. Peace out.